Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Yoshi Domoto. I'm the Executive Director of the Japan America Society of Georgia, and I'm so thrilled to have so many people with us today as we look into the impact of COVID-19 on telecommunications and what telecommunications companies are doing to navigate through the current situation with the pandemic. But we are so happy to have our expert panelists today from both Vonage and NTT Cloud Communications. First, we have from Vonage, Ms. Kristen Hronika and Mr. Jonathan Nelson. Hello.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for being with us. And from NTT, we also have Mr. Chris Sokolowski and Mr. Andrew McLone.
Good afternoon. Thanks.
Hello, hello. Thanks so much for being with us. And before we get started, I wanted to thank our member, SBC Consultants, Mr. Stephen Carpenter, for our expert panelists together. Thanks for being with us, Stephen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Great. And then off to our program, we have our expert moderator. Obviously, she's been doing this ever since we started our webinar series. Seems like forever ago now, but Miss Nozomi Morgan from Michiki Morgan Worldwide. Hello, Nozomi-san.
Hi, everyone. Hi, your son. And thank you, everyone on the panel, to be here today. We are so excited to have you.
Great. Well, as we go into our program, before we start the panel discussion, we would like to allow for both our members with Vonage and NTT to do a quick presentation and introduce about their company. So first off, we'll go with our team Vonage with Jonathan Nelson and Kristen Hronika.
Thank you so much.
And let me get your presentation up and running.
While he's pulling that up, I'll do a quick introduction of myself, and then Jonathan's going to walk through a couple slides. So I'm Kristen Hronika, Strategic Sales Director for Vonage. Been with the company 6 years, and I'm based in Atlanta, and I cover the full Southeast region of the country.
And I'm Jonathan Nelson, and if you can go to the next slide, Yoshi-san, appreciate that. I'm Director of Solutions Engineering. I've been with the company 10 years, so quite some time. I've been working through different projects for small to large scale enterprises, depending on what they're looking for, all in the communications vein. Next slide. So thanks to the Japan America Society, first of all, for inviting us. We're really excited to be a part of this. What Vonage has always done is we've provided a hosted communications platform. We've really doubled down on our own platform. It is proprietary, it is global in nature, and fully capable and flexible to handle all manner of communication needs. We've built this on a very robust architecture in the cloud. So a microservices architecture that allows you to really have that resiliency and redundancy that you need for times like this, when you have to make these transitions in a very quick step and keep your business running. Next slide. One of the core components, I think, that COVID has taught us is that integration is paramount. And so when you look to a communications provider, it's really important that the platform can integrate into all manner of things. You can see here some of the biggest names of business applications that are hosted out there that all of us use or have seen or have used in some point in our work careers. And it's important to drive data into that, because data is ultimately how we're making a lot of our decisions nowadays, whether through automation or just by seeing that data in order to make that best next step. We provide any number of services that have to do with unified communications. So your typical in-office communications, outbound, inbound, instant messaging, SMS, all within one application. And then we can also layer on contact center needs for those of you that need that approach as well. These are all packaged applications, and they're very capable in what you can accomplish with them. They're easy and intuitive to use so that you can load these on a computer and get started right away for your enterprise. Next slide. Where we're seeing a lot of interest nowadays is in that abstract, is in that next step. You know, how do we make these nuanced integrations? So while Vonage can provide an enormous amount of packaged integration into its communications platform, we see requests to integrate into one-off things, or perhaps embed some of our communication services into other business applications. That could be through video securely. We see a lot with telemedicine, enormous spikes in our video API usage that we can provide, as well as a lot of other things that we can pull data and provide more cohesive look into how these communications are being used. Next slide. Oh, one more, sorry, there we go. There we go. Oh, there's the one. Sorry about that. So I think the key here is, artificial intelligence is this huge topic right now. Everybody seems to hear a little bit about it here, a little bit about it there. But it's important for us to define what artificial intelligence is. And for Vonage, it's that natural language processing and understanding piece. We're here to provide that automated assistant that can help answer those initial questions, whether it's providing a document and sending it as an SMS or perhaps a WhatsApp message. It's being able to talk to an automated assistant in real time and get appropriate data back that can really help expedite your customers' needs as they look for interaction with you guys. But there's also another layer of it which really allows us to gather more information and pass it on to either a contact center agent or that salesperson or that business owner themselves, so that we can provide more information and really make those better decisions. Mm-hmm. So in all, we do have a pretty full stack of communication services. And thank you again to the Japan America Society for letting us come on and talk about them with you.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. And very informative and very, very easy to follow. Thank you so much. So next up we have NTT Cloud Communications. Chris.
Sorry, the dreaded mute button. Arigato, Nozomi-san. And for everybody, konnichiwa, minasan. Hopefully I said that correctly. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to talk today a little bit about the effects of COVID and then what they're having, how they're impacting the technology sector. So before I jump in, I just wanted to mention that given the quick spread of COVID-19 and the increase in countries imposing restrictions and movement in our daily lives, we're required to work from home a lot more often, which creates a bigger usage for data and collaboration tools for both our work and our leisure life. So obviously this results in a huge increase in telecom services. So big that the unified communications market is anticipated to grow to 186 billion within the next 5 years. So with that being said, and around security and helping people look at their business differently, kind of want to jump into our presentation today. So if you would kindly go to the next slide, please. So here at NTT, you know what? I guess I should have introduced myself first. My name is Chris Sokolowski. I run the indirect sales channel for NTT Cloud Communications. With me on the phone today, I have Andrew McGlone, and Andrew is our Director of Unified Communication Services for NTT. So we are your cloud communications experts, right? We're passionate about delivering our services, our cloud communication services to our end clients, realizing a greater ROI and a smarter workspace for them to be utilizing. We understand their goals and we tailor their end-to-end solutions so they can quicker advance their journey into that smarter workspace. Next slide, please. So how do we do it? We do it by putting you at the heart of what we do. When we have clients come to us, everybody has a goal, a vision, or an ambition for what that smarter workspace looks like, right? So we're technology independent. We partner with the two biggest and well-known technology partners that are out there, Microsoft and Cisco. We obviously see them as best-in-class partners, and their technologies are bringing unified communications to the forefront to all enterprise businesses. As I mentioned, we're customer-centric, where we tailor our approach so you can envision what that smarter workspace will look like in your company. By unlocking your business potential, we provide greater agility and a compelling ROI. So now you can shut down maybe your Dropbox, get rid of your Slack or GoToMeeting, and start consolidating those services. And then when you start to see the benefits and realization of the value that you created, you're seeing that you're starting to do more with less, right? You're unifying all the technologies into a smarter workspace for your ecosystem. And then finally, industry leading expertise. So we have 300 plus certified professionals all across the globe that help you and your company with the technology solutions that you're aiming to put in. Next slide, please. So obviously, NTT is a partner that you can trust. We're a proven top tier, tier 1 global cloud communications provider. We have close to 4 million daily users, over 30 million meetings a year, 20,000 digital events, and 10 billion minutes of cloud voice. Next slide, please. So some of our services, our comprehensive suite of intelligent communications. I mentioned Microsoft and Cisco. So getting our customers to leverage their existing spend in those technologies and create a unified communications platform for them, whether they want to bring their own device, bring their own carrier, do direct routing, or utilize our calling plans. We have a team of professional services professionals that help with the planning, the migration, and the adoption of the services that you buy from NTT. We do supply support services to ensure you're getting great call quality. If you have gateway support issues or questions, so we have the services that help out there. And then device as a service, and we also have cloud contact center that complement our services that we deliver. I want to utilize the remaining couple of minutes that I have and pass it off to Andrew, should he want to say anything.
Hi, Chris, and hi, everybody. Thanks for having us today. So some of you may be familiar with NTT. We are headquartered we are the same NTT from headquartered in Tokyo. And our real focus is on, delivering cloud communications to our customers. The one thing you may find interesting is that not only are we a telephone carrier in Japan, but also we're the 4th largest in the world. And so what we really focus on is try to deliver that service in a custom way in which our customers want to see it delivered. For most of our customers, that means either they're expanding their investments in Microsoft or in Cisco. And so if you are invested in either of those technologies, what we'll really focus on is looking at ways you can consolidate that investment and get more out of that investment with Microsoft and Cisco. But looking forward to your questions, and thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Chris. So I want to jump in to the panel discussion. So we have amazing experts from Vonage, Kristen, and Jonathan, and we have Chris and Andrew from NTT Cloud Communications. And I have a bunch of questions ready to ask, but I also wanted to ask the audience today, if you have any question, please use the Q&A function on Zoom. If you at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little icon that says Q&A. And if you can kindly put the questions in there and not in the chat box, because often the chat moves really quickly and we lose the questions. But if you have any comments, anything you want to share, feel free to put into the chat box. We welcome your input, your opinions, your view. But if you have a specific question, please put it into the Q&A box. Thank you. Okay, so the first question I had was really listening to both your presentations, and thank you again for such a wonderful presentations. Jonathan, you mentioned about how integration is paramount, and with the API usage and all that, and also Chris, I think you mentioned about the smarter workspace. and how we're all unifying all these technologies. And one number that really, there's a couple of them, but the one that stood out for me was about, in one of your slides, it said 30 million meetings. Is that a year?
That's correct.
Okay, so then my question to both, I'm just going to call it both teams, is that from looking at your customers since COVID hit, how has that increased? How has that changed? Or what change have you seen? Kristen, go ahead. I see you're ready. Yes.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah, perfect. I'll go first. We've seen a tremendous increase in our traffic. So we haven't seen any degradation due to the increased load of everybody working, from home across the world. But we've seen, I think video is up 8 times. We've seen tremendous need and requests for companies that maybe were using Vonage for just desk phones and weren't really embracing a lot of our collaboration tools like, soft phones, mobile applications, video, audio, screen share, and that true collaboration to work remotely. There's been a big ask for customers to get retrained and to start expanding into those other forms of communication aside from just the traditional phone systems.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you.
And I'll add to that. It's funny because we actually just had our quarterly all hands call yesterday, and we came off April. So prior to being a part of NTT, we were Arcaden, and we were started in 2001. April actually was our biggest month in history, hands down. We've never had a bigger month than we had in April. Since COVID hit, our digital engagements organization really has taken off with at least a 450% increase month over month since COVID hit. In our other services, we're getting a lot of attention around our Microsoft Teams and Cisco practice. I think the companies are starting to realize, long-term vision, this is the solution that they want, right? But the immediate need right now is the webcasting, the town halls, and getting out to their community really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So with that increase, with that, both sides, it's amazing numbers that you probably have never seen before, and it's just amazing change in the good way for your companies, for your industry. What are you doing to help the customers have a positive experience? Because I know they're completely overwhelmed and really lost or just have no clue what to do. And but also on your end, because this is such an increase, which was not planned, right? No one knew that COVID was going to hit. So I'm sure you weren't planned for this capacity. Well, I shouldn't say I wasn't sure, but I assume that you weren't planned for this. What are you doing? How are you, and how are you helping your customers? Andrew, Chris, do you want to go first?
Andrew?
Yeah.
Sure. I think our real focus is, I think the first thing we try to do is listen. I think there is a tendency to see a crisis as an opportunity to sell. And so we've really put a focus on just listening to our customers. But the real emphasis has been sort of adapting the services to the particular business needs. So we spend a lot of time doing training, and educating customers on the breadth of what they can do. And I thought it was really interesting, the idea that you can use your technology for new ways to do outreach to your customers. And so really, and maintaining business continuity. I think the second piece that we've done is really focus on onboarding. So a lot of customers who we meet with may have been doing chat or instant messaging via some technology, or may have been doing some online video meetings, but maybe didn't have the PSTN calling piece set up. So in other words, if I move all my employees off site, then they can't make a phone call and they can't receive phone calls. So we've spent a lot of time, doing sort of a fast migration so we can get people a phone number. So in other words, they can maintain business continuity at home. So in other words, all the same services you could get in the office, you can get at home. And so training and a focus on doing the technology integration in a rapid manner, that's really been our focus with customers.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Andrew makes a really good point, and I think that's really the interesting part of just being a service provider in general, and I've seen it across all of the competitive landscape is we're really helping our clients get more use out of the applications they were already using. So maybe they were using 30-40% of what the service could provide initially, and we're really helping reteach them on what the art of the possible is. I think we've seen paradigm shifts in a lot of different industries and how they go to market. And I'll piggyback on Andrew's comment about listening. I think it's important to listen about the troubles that they're going through so that we can help provide a technology that helps them attack their client base in a new way and really drive more success for their business. And it's really fun to see how fast people are adapting to these technologies that were really just slowly moving and to begin with. And it's just the advances are just really fun to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, I can, from my own experience, I'm a small business owner, so much smaller than the customers that you work with. But I've had the same experience of, because we don't see our potential customers face to face, there's a lot of shift that we had to make. But also, to your point about onboarding, I've actually reached out to some of the application providers that we've used and had onboarding calls these past month, which I never utilized in the past. It was one of those things that was offered, but didn't really care about it because the technology or the service I was using was easy enough for me to understand just looking at videos and stuff. But now that I have to integrate a lot of things, and it's beyond my knowledge, and I really needed the help. So I can, even from a very small business owner perspective, I experienced that as well. And another thing I realized was I didn't realize how helpful you are all, actually. It's almost so silly that you have, and the person, the onboarding specialist that was talking to me is like, Nozomi, you had this service all these years. And I was like, well, yeah, I guess I just never really utilized it. And also, I think it was also the fear of being upselled again, but not realizing that actually you, like you said, you're the specialist. You do know how to help. And finally, I think that's also a shift in business, is understanding that we're all partnering together. When you're selling, you're not I love what you said about listening. You're really listening to help. You're not listening just for the sake of upselling or just to sell more. It's really, you're there as a solution provider, as it's in your name. But that was one of the things that really hit me during this time, is that we're all in this together. We're trying to help each other, and really leveraging the resources from the experts. This is a time to be humble and learn, and not to be afraid of the unknown. So I love hearing that from both sides. So kind of in that line, what would you say for companies that you work with, or companies out there? How can you see them using the technology or services even better? Where do you see the differences from companies that, to your point, Jonathan, have moving really fast and quickly and really leveraging this, and the companies that are not? What are the differences there?
Yeah, I'll start with that, and then Jonathan, feel free to add in. I think we talk about what's that new normal look like, because I think for the past 2 to 3 months, depending on when your business started kind of shutting down, companies were kind of in this Band-Aid mode. Oh shoot, we need to figure out a way to stay in business. And so everybody kind of scrambled and scattered, and a lot of times the organizations had to find a solution that could fix their problem right now. And what we found is that a lot of these customers have, now a bunch of different applications. None of them work together, and they were a short-term strategy because it was built out of necessity. And so now we're having conversations of, what does that new normal look like? What technology tools do you need as you move into the next phase, which is going back to the offices, getting your employees back? But one of the big trends we're seeing and anticipating is that employees are going to potentially start to demand a little bit more flexible working terms, being able to maybe not work from home full time like we have been doing, but maybe, once a week, or maybe their kid's sick, being able to have that flexibility. Employers, I think, are going to see some of that strain put on them by their employees who now have the experience of working remotely full time. And so we're anticipating that employers are going to need to, unfortunately, stretch a little bit more and maybe switch the culture that was present prior to COVID. And so our technology and our solutions really allow them to have that flexibility. So they can return back to the office, they can allow for some flexible terms, or the more progressive organizations can have a full-time remote staff if they need to. So our solutions really run the gamut and give employers ultimate flexibility.
Yeah, and I would just add one quick thing on that. I think what's been interesting too is watching the adoption of technologies for that short-term fix, but then seeing it augment over this short gap, and they're looking at long-term use of these, what they thought were just going to be short-term fixes. So they're really seeing this new way of going to market and using communications to help them. I'll use the example, obviously, of the video meetings. We're using these to engage in all manner of different ways, from happy hours to all these other social distancing things that we have to do. But we're also seeing a lot of companies deliver content directly into homes on applications and things like that through these communication services. And I think that's really the exciting part, is watching the new ways people are adapting their businesses to really stay successful and keep the economy moving.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. How about you, Chris? Andrew, anything you'd like to add?
Sure. I think one of the area, I agree absolutely with Kristen and Jonathan, seeing the same thing. I had one CIO tell me last week that COVID-19 has been a miracle for adoption of Microsoft Teams. And obviously we don't want to sing the praises of something awful as a pandemic, but it has, for those people who planned ahead, right? They're prepared, and continuity is something they could maintain. For those folks who haven't planned ahead, then it's been a rush to sort of figure out, what is my strategy for the organization. It's interesting though to go a little deeper into your question here though, if to pivot a little bit, the question is no longer how do I use the technology, but how do I do things that were challenges for me in the office. So I'll give you two examples. One is around building trust, right? So we're used to having video meetings, but one of the biggest changes now is I turn on my video, and not only do I turn on my video, my expectation is I'm not multitasking. You know, I'm not doing 3 or 4 other things and then I'm focusing on the conversation. And so we've seen a lot of companies move on to not just how do I make sure people attend the meeting and they have access to it, but then also how do I address building trust or making sure that, you know, the humanity comes through the call, that I can have high fidelity conversations, quality conversations. And so definitely see a new type of conversation about that. Second place where we're seeing it, and this one just hit me in the face last week, is accessibility, right? Mm-hmm. Businesses who were addressing accessibility in the past, you know, by making an accommodation in the workplace for maybe somebody who is limited of sight or limited of hearing. Now, whenever I do a video call, in order for me to make sure that I am accessible to my organization, if I have people who have maybe a hearing problem, I need to make sure that there's captions on the screen, or I need to make sure that I have somebody who can do sign language on the screen, right? We're seeing that on the news, right? I think to how information is delivered, but now companies need to be able to think about accessibility in a new way. And to take it a little bit farther, I went to I was at the drugstore the other day, and I noticed that they had the 6 feet apart for every people waiting in line. I was like, oh, that's great. And then it occurred to me, how does somebody who can't see manage that? And how do you manage that space? So we're going to have to rethink that a little bit. And so I don't have the answers, but they're kind of interesting things that we're seeing changing in the workplace and also in society in general. So.
Yeah, love talking about accessibility. Actually, I had a conversation with a person who's in the management for a higher education organization, actually here in Atlanta. And he was very frustrated because one person on his team doesn't have good access to Wi-Fi. But he or she doesn't want to invest in setting up Wi-Fi either. So that was one of his frustrations, going back to, because you have different expectations, or that for him, it's like, why wouldn't she? Why wouldn't she pay that, whatever, how much money it is to do this? Because when it's necessary for the job, to do a great job, or in today's age, I guess was one. So it's interesting going back to what you said, Andrew, about different viewpoints, different value points, different sets of values, different expectations, things that we didn't have to address before. From a physical standpoint, or even from that mentality standpoint, there's a lot of things that now is surfacing that needs to be discussed. Talking about trust, right? Really having those discussions that we never ever thought we needed to have. Who thought we'll talk about Wi-Fi at home? Like what's your speed, or how, what's your, like, that wouldn't be, or your workspace, or to your point about 6 feet apart, like what does that look like for folks that doesn't have the same senses? So I think there's going to be a bunch of discussions that we've never had. And really, from a leadership standpoint, I feel like it's the leaders that are able to have those somewhat uncomfortable, difficult conversations are the ones that will build the trust and will be able to leverage the technology, but also because of the trust, they'll be able to actually be productive or efficient, or whatever word we want to use for this. So it's fascinating. It's amazing, because we're talking about technology or telecommunication, but it actually always comes down to people, right? The human side of this. So yeah, Stephen, by the way, is there anything you wanted to add? Since you actually see more of the whole industry and you get to touch different companies.
I touched different companies. Yeah, I had, well, like a lot of medical customers, I have a lot of medical customers that, like you said, weren't prepared because they're so used to everybody working from the office, and and the trust factor, like Andrew was saying. But it does help, like you said, to have some flex days, because the reality is people do get. I talked to a lot of workers that tell me actually they're working more hours actually, so they find that a lot of workers. A lot of people working from home are actually more productive than working in the office. So I think, I do think we're going to see more of a balance of flex work now, because like Kristen was saying, employers are going to kind of demand it. They've kind of proven, hey, it's been working the past 2 months, Another thing I'm hearing is that the operational side for businesses, they're reassessing, hey, how much square feet office space do I really need? Because that's a cost savings too. If you can have companies, telecommunications companies I work for, let's say you have 50 people in office, if only 20 or half of those are in there at a time, you don't really need the same amount of space. So there's a cost savings also for allowing people to work from home. So I think we'll see more of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We've actually
definitely don't want to be in the commercial real estate business.
Yeah.
Shared tenant spaces.
I was going to echo that. We're seeing major trends, as a lot of people are, of companies reducing their office space and offering remote and more flexible working solutions. And obviously a company's culture is a big component of this, right? If a company had zero remote workforce policy prior to COVID, they're going to be a little bit slower to adopt, and that's okay. Every company is different. And so when we start talking with organizations, it's first and foremost, what was the culture prior to COVID? What are you seeing now? What are your needs post-COVID? But with commercial real estate, at Vonage, we've actually saved millions of dollars a month closing commercial real estate, and we use our own tools to work remotely. Give you an example, our DC office probably had 200 to 250 employees, and based upon the badge swipes of people going to the office every day, they were finding month over month less and less people actually showed up on a daily basis. Productivity never decreased because everybody had the tools to work remotely. They were just saving hours of sitting in horrible DC traffic. So we actually shut down the entire office, which had been there for over 10 years. And the productivity for those employees has actually gone up significantly. So it's been very interesting, but we're going to keep, I think, seeing that trend across the country and around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So actually, Kristen, I wanted to ask you, since you brought this up, and also I see it in the question from Mike. it's kind of related. So usually we take Q&As later, but because it's related, I just want to go ahead and ask a question. But he's asking, how do you get past barriers to implementation of remote solutions at companies who are slow or afraid to make changes? And I wanted to add to that because a lot of, so I work with a lot of Japanese companies, and Japanese companies will probably be in that bucket of slow and afraid. And I just wondered, what would you say? How would you help them to get past those barriers of implementation?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start if that's okay. And then Jonathan, I'd love you to add on too, followed by NTT. But typically we start with a very candid conversation, as I said. What are you afraid of? What was the culture prior to, and what are your employees asking for? And it really goes back to what Andrew mentioned about listening. We can provide all of the coolest, most high-tech tools, but if the culture of the company is not going to use or embrace it, you're A, setting yourself up for disaster, and B, spending money on a solution that doesn't make sense. And so it really starts with that foundation of having that really important discovery call, even before we talk specifically about technology and getting into demos. But to answer the question specifically, I would say, once we figure out what they need, we go into a thorough demo process, typically allow the companies to test it out in a demo environment of some sort, and then create a custom install plan for offices going live and remote employees going live. But since our solutions are all cloud-based, you don't have to have somebody go on site and install anything. It can all be done remotely, and then we have a high focus around training. Jonathan, anything I missed?
Yeah, I mean, really just from the technology side, being from the engineering side of the house here at Vonage, I think really what we've come down to is trust. And I think it was Andrew who mentioned it earlier. There's a trust and culture that has to start with there, but there has to be trust in the technology that you're going to get a quality communications product. You're going to be able to intuitively use it so that people don't get frustrated when they can't just raise their hand and have IT come over to them, right? So you've got these people jumping feet first into technologies that they really just weren't using other than an old pick up the phone and dial the number situation. So it's really important for the service provider to be able to provide enablement. You've heard that from NTT and from Vonage. That's paramount to us right now, is making sure that people get the biggest bang for their buck, but also that the technology is resilient and just keeps them connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, since Andrew, you did talk about trust a little bit earlier, can you talk a little bit more about, especially with these organizations that are afraid to implement? And I think it's, you touched upon this, but also from my experience talking to a lot of leaders, is that they don't trust that the work is getting done. We're not sure if they're actually doing. They can be on, they can be seen in the screen, but are they really working? Are they really getting things done? What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think, and I think Kristen and Jonathan hit on a lot of the key points. A couple of thoughts. One, a barrier, to implementation. We in IT we always talk about people, process, technology, right? And I would actually make the argument that in the world of cloud services, the technology is oftentimes the easiest part. I make the argument that the most complex part of any project is people. And so I think there's a great quote about from a guy named John Cotter, who's kind of the father of change management, which says that, listen, if 80% of your organization isn't on board with a big change, you're not going to be successful in the change. You're not going to implement it successfully. So getting an executive mandate is critical. For Mike in particular, for the question that he'd asked about in terms of getting past the barrier, I think the question that you want to ask, and open-ended questions are really good because it affords you the opportunity to hear details, nuance, opinions, emotions, facts, hypotheses about what people are talking about, is I think, the question to ask is, what is the culture of your company? And what is your communication and collaboration strategy, right? Ask those two open-ended questions, and I think the answers will fall out of that. I mean, if it's not on the culture of the company to make a big transformation, in other words, if people are legitimately worried about productivity, and productivity is a concern, you're probably going to have to ask yourself about the commitment of the people to the mission of the company, right? That's a broader question than whether or not the technology is meeting the particular needs. that's one piece of it. It's just the change and how you get the mandate for change. I think the other piece of the question is around employee engagement, which is a question, I think, which is a challenge for companies completely independent of COVID, completely independent of technology, which is that how do you have an engaged base of employees who are really, really focused on achieving their goals and have technology tools, processes, teamwork to help them achieve their goals. And I do think one of the things, and this is definitely true for Vonage, it's true for Microsoft, it's true for Cisco, it's true for any provider out there, is that increasingly there's a lot more investment in technology that talks about how people work. Right? So in other words, it's not just using the video, it's not just using the audio, but it's also when they're doing it, how frequently they're doing it, in what scenarios they're using it in, and oftentimes, and the generic term is usage reports, right? Is there's a lot of really good technology that's basically allows you to either get a sense on an individual by individual basis when I'm working, when I'm productive, when I have meetings, when I've got my own personal time, and there's also a lot of good technology that gives you reporting about your entire workforce. It's not an I spy situation. It's certainly not about shame or guilt or anything like that. It's more about, hey, my people tend to have meetings between 10 and 12. Okay, maybe I need to maybe those are bandwidth constrained times, or now's, the email traffic drops down on Friday. So maybe Friday is a no email day, and people are, being attuned and engaged with your employees. Certainly a broader question, but I think that's really, really a key to, if you have that way of sensing where your organization is, or if you have that way of triangulating about opinions, ultimately change and implementation is going to be a lot simpler at the end of the day. So I know it's kind of a broad answer to the question, but hopefully gives you some insights about how at least one perspective on how to drive that sort of change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I love what everyone's shared. And it's so interesting. Again, we're talking about technology, but it always comes down to the people, right? The people are the complex people. The key, really is about the people. And the concerns that a lot of these leaders have, we talked about the commitment, the productivity, the efficiency, all of that. It really has nothing to do with the technology. It's a problem that they've always had about engagement, commitment, and all that. It's just has surfaced in your face because of this, but it's always has happened. I mean, there's been studies to say, I believe it's like 70% of American workers are disengaged at work. That was before COVID. This is a couple of years ago. I know in Japan, actually, their numbers are even higher. So that distrust actually does not come from, it has nothing to do with working from home. That distrust already existed, even when you're working together in the office. But it just really highlights or sheds light more onto this with now having that distance apart.
Can I make a quick comment about that? Does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Well, just remind me of, it's kind of a joke, but a few years back, I had a large enterprise client based here in Atlanta, and he was telling me, the CIO was telling me a joke in a meeting that when he was hired his first day at work, he went to the CEO of the company and said, okay, what do you want me to do? And the CEO looked at him kind of funny. He said, well, I hired you. You're supposed to figure that out. That's why I hired you. Don't ask me. So it's kind of funny, because I think that's what we have to do with, hopefully we do with all our employees that we hired, right? I mean, that's why we hired them, is because should be some trust there already, hopefully, right? Mm-hmm. And hopefully this time has proven that.
Yeah. I think one last thing too, if I can, it's hard to follow up after Kristen, Jonathan, and Andrew, because I think they nailed everything, right? But again, maybe to ease one of those barriers, a lot of times, the good service providers, you could tell who they are, because again, we're going to use that word listen, right? They're the ones that are going to sit down, they're going to listen to you. They're not going to tell you what you need. They're going to find out from you what it is that you're looking for. And then they're going to tailor that solution around that. And then I think it's really important, which we've been seeing a lot of, is proof of concept, right? There are companies globally that, maybe they trust their American workforce, but they don't really trust their EMEA workforce, right? So, we could do that proof of concept and say, look, we'll throw it in for you, run with it for, a month or two, and then let's go back and revisit it and see what the analytics show, right? So having that conversation to show that proof of concept, and, they could take that information and do what they choose with it.
Yeah, that's right. Like you just have to keep on trying, right? Trying and do it. If it doesn't work out, then you can stop it, but you just have to keep on trying and moving forward. Yeah, love that. This is last question that I want to ask. And now moving from what's going on now to the future, because we still have tomorrow and the future is out there. So what is the future that you see for telecommunications? Some words that I've heard today was already it's already now, but I think would be even more advanced would be like AI. A lot of that I hear that's already here now too is like 5G. But what else or what more can we expect from the future of telecommunications? Who would like to start? I see Jonathan's mouth moving, so I'm going to go to Jonathan.
Sorry, I was muted there. I was going to see if NTT wanted to take it first, but
okay. Do you want to go,
someone?
Andrew?
I'll let Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew, go. Okay.
He's my AI guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely seeing a lot in terms of artificial intelligence, right? Understanding how people work and then building in solutions that help. Whether it's something like, enterprise dialogue management. It sounds like a fancy term, but it's this idea that if I have a customer who I'm engaging with, that customer is going to choose how I want to communicate, whether it's a phone call, whether it's IM, instant messaging via website, or whether it's email, right? It's this idea of having systems that are intelligent enough and flexible enough to be able to communicate with how a customer wants to be communicated with. And so you think about this from the perspective of age groups, right? If we think about, maybe somebody my age, I kind of like to make a phone call and make sure that, my credit card is canceled or my membership is canceled. Whereas, maybe you have a millennial who's very, very comfortable with an IM or a chat on a website. And so I think that's one area where you're seeing a big change. And I think AI is huge in supporting that, and certainly doing the machine learning to understand how certain people behave, and then in turn making sure that you have flexibility to deliver sort of a customized communication solution of what they need. The other area I might just give another example is just convergence, right? We're seeing a big shift away from anything that lives on premises for a company. The hyperscaler, the big providers out there are really sucking up all the internet traffic in terms of the cloud. And what that means ultimately for companies is I don't have to put hardware in my office anymore. I don't necessarily need to have a fleet of network administrators administering all of my IT. Maybe I need to have a specialist, or I need to have somebody who's focused on really translating technology to how my workforce can be productive, right? Which is another big investment. It's not getting rid of people. It's really just transferring where their skills are. And what you are seeing though is a real focus on cloud. And so telephony is a huge piece of telecommunications is a huge piece. I mean, just the number of on-premise gateways, PBXs, it's just that number is diminishing year over year over year, and a real focus on IP based or cloud based communication. So kind of two areas there, AI and the cloud.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think you make some really great points. I kind of get a little giddy when I talk about artificial intelligence. We could take up a whole hour and then some about it. It's some of the funnest things to talk about with new tech. But kind of dissecting that into the two discussion topics, which is AI and 5G. I'll start with 5G. I think that 5G is important in enabling the mobile workforce. To Andrew's point, you see things leaving the premises and really going hosted in many different facets, whether it is communications or it is other things. And to call back to some of the trust and getting the organizations that were typically premises-based organizations and letting them have trust in their employees, we have that ability to integrate those mobile communications applications. So we have Vonage has a mobile app that you can do all the same communications on your desktop with on your mobile device. And we can tie that together into, say, a customer retention management software, CRM solution like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, and start logging data about that productivity, whether it's instant messages, SMS, phone calls, so you can see that productivity. I mean, we're paying tons of money for these applications that really collate all this data and help us make better business decisions. And so let's take the communications piece and plug it into there as well so that you can make those decisions. Or as I make this transition to the next topic, which is AI, you can start having AI make these automated decisions for you. Our salespeople are successful when they follow 1, 2, 3, 4 in a step. Let's make sure that we're giving them that cadence so they can do that. The people who spend more time on the phone tend to get more sales, whatever it is, communications, meetings, things like that. It's important to have those measurements so that you can let AI take all those mass amounts of data and start helping you make those appropriate decisions. It's not just the natural language processing and understanding, which is that chat bot, that voice bot, that interaction piece, which really does help take the load off of the mundane for the human interactions. There's just so much to it, and it's really exciting to see where we're going as an industry, as service providers, and just all the different applications that are popping up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that. Thank you.
Yeah. I mentioned, just real quick, I mentioned earlier, we're poised to hit $186 billion in unified communication spend. That total includes, the AI, the business intelligence and data analytics software that companies are going to be using to basically, kind of keep tabs on their sales force, their customers, and their employees, right? So I do see a huge potential there, a lot of growth in that area. And the customers that I'm seeing today, they're coming to us not wanting to spend more money, but asking us to help them leverage, hey, I got these tools today. What can I do with them? Right. And, once I know and I can maximize that utilization, then I could start looking into other areas, or I can start realizing a better ROI and taking that money and shifting that into other areas of my business that really make sense, that could forward my business.
Yes, makes sense. Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, we are at 1:52. And so now I'd love to open it up for questions from the audience. We've already answered a few of them, actually, since we're already in that conversation. I see one coming in. So wonderful. So everyone who's listening in, if you have a question, please enter in the Q&A box. Okay, so here we go. Moving forward to address the new norm, what is your business philosophy in addressing SDGs? This is from Mona. If you can just raise your hand who want to take that question. And actually, it's my
I'll be the one to ask what an SDG is.
Yeah, I was going to plead ignorance. So many acronyms out there.
Okay. Good. So Mona, can you kindly let us know what SDG is? You can put in the chat box for us. Okay, well, while you're doing that, Mona, let me go to Matt. How do we get in touch with the presenter after today's call? Oh, that's easy. That one is very easy. I can answer that one. We will, from the Japan American Society of Georgia, we will send out a follow-up email. And in the email, we'll have information of the presenters. And also we'll have some other, I think your son will also have their presentation.
Yes, we do have their presentation as well. And with permissions from both our friends at NTT and Vonage, we can send those out as well in PDF formats.
Yes, so please everyone look out for the email. The recording will be there. And also we've heard there'll be some special deals or maybe promotions or something little special from both companies. So please make sure that you look at that email. It will come out either Friday or maybe early next week. Okay, so thank you, Matt, for asking that great question. So Mona, yeah, if you can help us understand what SDG is. I hope you're still there. Can anyone take a guess what it could be? Does
Do
I
you-
think it's sustainable development goals.
Yeah, I Googled that.
yeah. Okay. Well, then let's assume that is until Mona can answer us. But moving forward to address a new norm, what is your business philosophy in addressing the sustainable development goals? That's a big question.
Well, I know
Yeah,
NTT as a whole is really focused on, smart cities, which is this
Mhm.
idea of really focusing on how do we make sure we have a philosophy of reuse of reducing the carbon footprint, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I think probably it pans out in relation to our customers. So I have a customer in West Palm Beach, Florida right now, who is a massive manufacturer of consumer packaged goods right now. And, what they talked about, and I'll just relate this back to telecommunications, is that even before COVID-19, whenever they moved their communications online, they were really focused on, one of their objectives, obviously, was enabling their employees to be more productive anywhere on any device. But what that resulted in, which was consistent with the company goals, was a big reduction in the carbon footprint associated with business travel. And so I think companies are looking for all the time, hey, what's a nice to have versus a need to have, right? And there are times when you have to be in person for a meeting. Now, somewhat of a challenge. And so I think, one of the areas is that certainly online communications can reduce the amount of business travel we have to do. But at the same time, we have to build that trust. We have to find new ways to build that trust. So I think NTT, we're really focused on making sure we understand what the sustainable development goals of our customers are, and then in turn, trying to make sure that we support those in some thoughtful manner.
Great, thank you.
And I would echo that on the business travel. That was the first thing that came to mind for us as well. And I think the focus on unnecessary business travel, because when you look at it, people that travel, 60, 70, 80% plus, especially globally, they spend a lot of time. And it's a lot of money for companies, and it's a lot of time for that individual. And so with the kind of forced video conferencing we're seeing with COVID, we're really going to see, I think, a decrease in unnecessary business travel, especially, and people will think twice about using those resources. Time is the most precious resource, I think. And so I think it will really kind of help everybody out by kind of considering those things. And, also just offering our services to maybe areas and people that maybe thought in the past they couldn't afford to upgrade their technology. So kind of a focus around that. We do have programs and services available for, companies that do struggle, maybe in a lower socioeconomic status, or maybe a company that's more rural that may not have the best internet access. So we'll always have those conversations and really make sure that we understand what challenges they anticipate or why they are fearful of moving to the cloud, as an example, and make sure that we, go ahead and pay attention to those. I'm getting invited to my next meeting.
Yes, we're getting at that time. So, well, thank you so much, Kristen, Jonathan from Vonage, and Chris and Andrew from NTT, and Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll conclude the session here, and your son will share his closing remarks. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nozomi.
Thank you, Nozomi-san, for a wonderful job yet again in moderating our webinar, and to all of our expert panelists. We really appreciate you taking the time to share insights. I think with this new norm, it's more important than ever to alleviate any concerns we have with technology and kind of use them to the best of our abilities moving forward. And certainly with Georgia and Japan sharing a very close relationship with over 600 Japanese companies in our state, who's invested over $10 billion in our economy and hire over 37,000 Georgians in our state. There's a lot going on, and I think there's a lot that both the American side and Japan side can do to use that technology, and hopefully the usage of technology will help improve and increase the amount of investment going from both Japan to Georgia and also Georgia to Japan as well. So thank you all, and hopefully we can all be part of that story moving forward to kind of continue bringing people together. And perhaps next time we do this, we can do a hologram meeting, right? And use maybe artificial intelligence and 5G.
Virtual reality.
That's right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But we do have some other upcoming events as well. Tomorrow, to celebrate the Asian American Heritage Month, we do have a Japanese cooking watch party as we kind of learn about the best foods that our restaurants here in Atlanta has to offer, including Beers Papa Cream Puffs, also Wagaya Japanese restaurant, and then all the oldest Japanese restaurant in Atlanta, Nakato Japanese restaurant, will be kind of showing us about what's going on with their restaurants, and then some of the great foods that you guys can order and get some food to enjoy some Japanese cuisine. Also tomorrow in the afternoon, we have our online English conversation class for our Japanese members, featuring Bigler ESO and our teacher, Miss Liz Bigler. And then this weekend, we do have our Nihongo Egokai conversation group, and also a Netflix watch party of Miss Hokusai, a animated film that's won some awards about the daughter of the famous Japanese ukiyo-e artist Hokusai. And then also next weekend, we do have a program, a very Japanese cultural program, Radio Taiso, or in English, radio exercising. We'll be doing a demo to kind of do some exercising virtually together. And then on June 10th, we do have a International Women's Series program talking about practical and tactical strategies to reevaluate and reimagine your future goal. So we have a lot going on to say the least, but we look forward to having you all join many of our upcoming events. And again, thank you again to all of our panelists and our moderator, and we look forward to you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Take care.
thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Everyone.